Yesterday, on the 4th anniversary of Donald Trump's attempt to overturn the results of a free and fair election, Congress met to certify Donald's Electoral College victory in the 2024 presidential election. As a result, we have learned the answer to this question. Was the insurrection Donald incited on January 6, 2021, successful? And the answer to that question, tragically, is yes. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Nerd Avengers. I had to confess, I just made myself a little sad reading my intro. However, you know what makes me not sad anymore? The much missed Dahlia Lithwick is in the house. I'm so excited. We're all so happy to have Dahlia with us today. It has been far too long, my friend. But let me do the official introduction. Dahlia Lithwick, senior editor at Slate, host of the Amicus podcast, and the author of the amazing book, Lady Justice. We also have with us today Danielle Moodie, host of the Danielle Moodie Show, and co-host of Democracy-ish, also on the Mary Trump Media channel. You can also find Danielle's channel on YouTube. And we have Wajahat Ali, editor of The Left Hook on Substack and co-host of Democracy-ish, the aforementioned. Okay, guys, yesterday was something of a day because it's not just January 6th, the day we certify the election anymore. And it's not just the anniversary of this dark chapter in American history that we are, that we will indeed transcend. No. It is, Dahlia, the anniversary of a successful self-coup or auto coup against the United States of America. So just checking on how you felt about the way things unfolded. Did anything not happen that you were perhaps anticipating? And did anything happen that surprised you?
No, it's so weird to be here with Waj and Danielle specifically, only because I feel like the three of us have been the voices of like the problem of when they go low, you go high. Like we keep saying that over and over, and this was a like completely gracious, transition of power, right? Like there was no winking, like, ha ha ha, you cooed, like there was nothing. It was just an utterly gracious, constitutionally serious transfer of power, acknowledged as such. And, some guy who wouldn't shake the vice president's hand. But I think it just, for me, was like almost the complete embodiment of the problem, which is that one side, smashes windows and like smears feces on the wall and like kills people. And the other side, by definition, because it's what democracies are, transfers power. And I just think it's just to watch it again. And I guess I would end on this. You can't watch it without reliving what happened 4 years ago. And it's visceral, right? We all remember every chunk of video. We remember every piece of this. And so I think the idea that in the face of that memory in your bones that this happened, to graciously, peacefully transfer power feels like the materialization of the problem, which is we always go high.
Well, Dahlia, I would call it an abdication. I'm, all due respect, actually, I don't know due respect at all. I think that when you value following the rules more than you value the truth of what's going on, you're not going high at all. You're taking the coward's way out. Were you surprised at all that not one Democrat stood up? because we saw this in 2000. I actually don't remember 2016 or 2017 because I was, still in my coma of despair after Clinton. But Democrats did protest in 2000. Not one Democrat stood up and said, we are handing over the keys to what was once the greatest democracy in world history to an insurrectionist, a traitor, a convicted felon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, the reason we have this heavy security presence today is because if Kamala Harris had won, they would have done it again.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Did that surprise you at all? I have to admit, I was a little surprised.
I mean, I'll defer to my colleagues, but I guess I will say, I think the entire theme of what we're going to talk about for the rest of this show is obeying in advance. Yep. We started 2017 with democracy dies in darkness. We are starting 2025 with people suing the Washington Post for firing, a cartoonist who pretty much just said what we were all thinking. So I just think at every single turn, the lesson that has been learned is either maybe it wasn't that bad, which is just horrifying because now we're, literally in the world of Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel and, a bunch of lunatics, like making you long for the days of Rex Tillerson. But I think that we're also just sitting in a media moment and in a political moment and in a oligarch moment where everybody has just decided to get along. And, that's Zuckerberg and that's the Washington Post. And that is members of Congress on the Dem side who are like rolling up their sleeves to work with Trump. We are not the opposition. We are not the resistance. We are, I think, embarrassed that we ran for democracy in 2024. That was the opening and closing argument, that people cared about democracy, and it turned out they didn't. And so I think the decision has been taken at a really meta level. Yep. Pardon me for using the word meta, at a very, very high level. I think we've just taken the decision that people don't care about democracy. So let's not keep, flogging a dead horse.
Yeah, look, Danielle, I mean, I know it is not surprising, but we should all be shocked by the complacency. This is nothing new. The Democrats historically and, in some instances, tragically, always allow the Republicans to set the narrative, whether it's immigration or, for many decades, it was women's rights by actually borrowing the language of pro-life, for example. And now here we are, just saying, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Let's just move on, as if there is anything normal or reasonable or safe or anything other than cataclysmic about what's going on.
I mean, I think that this is why you will find that people will begin to tap out from our democracy, from the news, because you feel gaslit. And you don't just feel gaslit by the Republican Party, because look, you expect very little from them, right? Like if I can't say, if I can't expect in a place of decorum for you to shake someone's damn hand, to show a sign of respect to the Vice President of the United States, but also, I don't know, to your wife, Bruce Fisher, then I don't know what it is that we expect people to do. But it isn't just the Republican Party, to your point, Mary and Dahlia, it is Democrats, because yesterday, before January 6, 2021, I couldn't have told you what day the election gets certified, because I never gave a damn, because it was just the assumption that we have an election, they get certified, we watch the swearing in on Inauguration Day.
Yeah, it was purely ceremonial.
It was purely ceremonial. So the idea that you would not use the opportunity of this 4-year anniversary, as now Biden's legacy is cemented is sandwiched between Trump 45 and Trump 47, and you don't understand the significance of that, of what you have done. Because here's the thing, like, Democrats did have an opportunity yesterday to showcase to the American people, not just, oh, we're the adults in the room, but let us talk to you about the significance of what it means that we are transferring power back to an aspiring autocrat and dictator, and how dangerous this moment is for America. And while we know that those of us that voted for Kamala Harris would never see ourselves storming the castle, right? Because that's not who we are. The fact is that they missed an opportunity to discuss it, to cement it in the minds of the American people. And I would even argue that Biden's bullshit op-ed that he put up the day before was just another bit of sane washing, right? And that you're adding on to the pyre that people have already seen, which is that, oh, our institutions held. Did they? Did they really hold? Because you told us that voting for you in 2020 was fighting for the soul of this nation. And now you have given the soul of the nation to the person who you said that we needed to protect ourselves from. And now not only are you welcoming him back into the White House, but you are telling the rest of us to give Donald Trump a chance and welcome him back into our homes and into our day-to-day lives, because you're showing up at inauguration with a big fucking smile on your face as if all is going to be well. And that's what I think it turns people away, and why 7 million Americans stayed home in this past election is because they don't see a party fighting for them, and a party that they can rely on to not just be the adults in the room, but to be the purveyors of truth and logic and what it means to be an American in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw this throughout the campaign, which is why it did have an impact on who stayed home and who didn't. And one thing that really stands out to me, I mean, it wasn't just Tim Walz, but it did stand out to me, the way he made common cause with the fascist who is J.D. Vance. For those of you who don't remember who J.D. Vance is, he's actually vice president-elect. I know we haven't seen much of it, right? Remember that guy, the couch guy? Anyway, he's a straight up fascist. And Tim Walz was like, oh yeah, we can agree on a lot of things, which, begs the question, who is this for? Like, who was that op-ed for? And before we get to that, I do want to play this clip because Republicans are trying to explain it away by saying that this just disrespectful excuse of a man didn't shake Kamala Harris's hands. Does that mean his eyes don't work? Let's see.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he had another hand, like most of us do, can shake hands with both hands, even if it's awkward. What does he do with his free hand, Waj? What did he do with his free hand?
He puts his hand in the pocket, and
I guess that was an accident.
No, yeah, I said that also. I said I tweeted something yesterday saying, what a shameless, fickle coward. And then MAGA, you got, the shamelessness of MAGA. Sometimes you got to tip your hat to them, because I don't know how people do it. Like, I don't know how people live their life without any shame. Because even if I lie, like my face will contort a bit. You'll see a little sweat trickle. I'll avert my eyes. I fear God. I'm like, my parents are watching. But without any shame, they go, did you see that he was using a cane? And I'm like, oh, maybe I was wrong. And then I look, and I'm like, okay, he's using a cane, but he has two hands. With one hand, he's using the Bible. He gives the Bible back to his wife. And then with the free hand, he could have easily sat there and said, oh, pardon me, Vice President Harris. Pleasure meeting you. He deliberately puts it back in the pocket, refuses to look at her, doesn't acknowledge her, looks at her as if she's like the walking COVID plague. Like, that's how he treats her.
Now they believe
he might have embraced her. If
with COVID, he's like, here's some herd immunity, but he's like, black woman, you. And the disrespect, the condescension, and the fact that it is a white man, not even looking down at her, refusing to look at her, right? Like, you are so beneath me that I can get away not even acknowledging your presence, you silly black Indian woman. I can't
And not even the
believe-
guy, he wasn't the guy being sworn in.
Yeah.
It was his wife.
But that's
So-
exactly it, right?
Yeah.
It's that this is America. That even me, the husband of a senator, a freaking nobody, a man who will be remembered for nothing, is still better than you black woman who thinks that you have the audacity to command my respect. You're nothing. You know, we run these parts. We're the ones who paved these streets. Actually, your ancestors did, but we owned you. And I know people might think I'm like leaning in a bit too hard here, but it's the mindset of privilege, the white male superiority, the fact that they have to actually look upon us with respect. Those pretenses are gone. You know why they're gone? Because we're back in power.
That's right.
MAGA, Donald Trump. We run these streets again. Us white boys, and we're gonna have our cowboy hat, and then we're gonna have our guns. And if you look at us the wrong way, you better turn around and walk away. You better not be uppity, because you might get choked to death. Don't make me choke you to pacify America, right? And you think I'm laughing, you think I'm just being hyperbolic about this, but look at the rise in vigilante violence. Look at the respect that MAGA gives to white vigilante killers of black people and allies of black people. And if you're white right now and you think you'll be safe, I want to remind you, Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed 2 white people at a BLM rally, and
Yep.
MAGA looks at those 2 white people as traitors. Danielle Perry was pardoned by Governor Abbott. Danielle Perry killed a white man at a BLM rally in Texas who was the boyfriend of a black woman. He was convicted by a jury of his peers in Texas, serving 25 years. He was pardoned. So this is the mindset here that I want people to think about, right? This is the mindset of the belligerent, arrogant cowboy who believes that he alone, the white man, the white Christian man, came to this country, and like Rick Santorum said a few years ago, and he was fired from CNN. If he said it right now, he'd probably get a promotion.
Totally.
Yes, there were some Native Americans, but we birthed this country from nothing. That's the mindset that the rest of us have to acknowledge, and we have to confront, and we have to resist. This is what we're dealing with. And, you know, instead, Democrats, and I agree with Danielle, they're like, oh, you silly coup dudes. What's a coup amongst friends? Everyone coups once in a while. You coup, I coup, everybody coups. I don't know about you, but I'm in Virginia. I'm snowed in. You know, yesterday was January 6th. I didn't feel compelled to just get up and insurrect, right? Like I didn't wake up on January 6th and go, okay, time to do an insurrection. And I went out and I'm like, oh crap, I'm snowed in. I'll get them next time. This is the mindset of a right-wing authoritarian mob, a cult that has been primed by right-wing media, where in 2025, a majority of Republican voters, about 80%, believe Donald Trump's lie that he won the election that he lost. And that, if you all, I think it's worth it. I know people don't like it, but yesterday on Democracy Ish, we played 3 minutes of this 5.5 clip of January 6th that ABC News has put out. And, you know, it's worth sitting with the discomfort, because you sit there and you're like, I can't believe this happened in this country. I can't believe that there were no cops there. I can't believe that the cops that were there, these poor guys, men and women, were injured, later killed themselves. Now you understand why, because you look at the trauma. I can't believe people allowed MAGA supporters to smear feces in the Capitol Hill. I can't believe that these cowards, these Republicans, and I love those clips of those Republicans being, you know, like literally cowering in fear, barricaded, and then going around 4 years later and saying, oh, these are hostages. These are freedom fighters. And the fact that the man who incited that is ascending back to the White House, Mary. And the fact that on day one, he's going to pardon those violent insurrectionists. And the fact that if a person who looked like me and Danielle even got too close to a Capitol officer 4 years ago, we'd be shot. We'd be chalk lines. And so it's a resurgence of white supremacy, the resurgence of vigilante violence, and you need a Democratic Party. Sorry for my rant, folks. I'll end right now. But you need a Democratic Party, and I'm going to say this more and more now, that fights. People respect fighters, right? And if you watch sports, I'll give you an example. Even if your team loses, If your team fights to the end, you know what you say? That was my team. They fought. They
Yep.
went to the end. They gave it their all. What nobody respects are weak, milquetoast, passive, individuals who bend the knee to billionaires and talk about restoration when the rest of us are talking about reform. The system did not hold. The establishment failed. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the fact. And the institutions are corrupt. And you need people willing to promote the message. And I think we're going to talk, as Danielle said, we're going to talk about this for the rest of the show. The easiest winning message. The bad guys are the 1%. Elon Musk, Sachs, Thiel, Trump, and they're stealing all of your cookies. Our cookies, the 99%. And we stand up and fight for you. Who's the Democrat, Mary, who's going to stand up to the billionaire class and who has a fighter's spirit and a fighter's punch? That Democrat will be rewarded. And if you're not willing to fight, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this publicly. I haven't given allegiance to the Democratic Party. I'm done with you then. I don't need you. You could be replaced with something else. I don't need milquetoast, pathetic men and women who are like 90 years old who will bend the knee and are going for restoration where you used to pat Mitch McConnell on the back and have, bourbon. I want people who will fight for reform. Sorry for my TED talk.
No.
Today.
Listen, we've talked about this since the election. The deafening silence of the Democrats, their failure to hold hearings on the nominees, these awful nominees that Donald is setting up to be confirmed. Their failure to point out that the people Donald wants to pardon for January 6th are people who attacked viciously our police officers who were trying to protect our Capitol and our representatives from both parties. People who defiled our Capitol. These are the people Donald Trump supports. These are the specific things about the nominees. Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset, for example. Hegseth is a misogynist and Christian nationalist, and on and on. I mean, just pound it, and they have done nothing, Tara. So we were just talking about, how we felt about yesterday and the absolutely jaw-dropping fact that it was just business as usual, considering what this anniversary means now. It is not, as Danielle said earlier, up until, say, January, I don't know, what year, 2020, who knew? Who knew that January 6th was the certification of the Electoral College? Because it was a completely ceremonial thing that happened, and it was just, whatever. So now it means something completely different, and it means something even worse now because of the person whose victory was certified yesterday.
Good to be back with you guys. Happy New Year. And I know it's like a weird, like, is it? I'm struggling with
I'm going to say no.
I know it's well, we're all still breathing, we're all still here, so I'll take that win, and we're all still here to still have breath to fight. To Waj's point, anyone who knows me and has followed me and my organization and my colleagues knows that the one thing we are not is milquetoast.
Right.
And being a fighter is part of my DNA, and that's because I'm from New Jersey. But this whole thing, January 6th, has been a very particular personal crusade for me, because people who have followed me for years know that I am the product of a law enforcement family. And even some folks may have been on the other side with me, of me, many years ago during the police protests and Black Lives Matter stuff way back into 2014 when CNN first hired me. And I was one of the lone voices on the other side, bringing a different perspective about law enforcement. And I have a very personal attachment to the law enforcement community, being the granddaughter of a police officer and the wife of a federal officer, that January 6th hits me also a little different. And not only from being a Capitol Hill staffer for 7 years, I ran those halls for 7 years, going to college in Washington, D.C. because of my love for our government and wanting to make a difference and defending our democracy and trying to make it a better place. We may not all agree on how we get there and what those policies are, but we all used to have a common denominator in that we felt this was the greatest country in the world and our democracy was never in question. And then to watch that happen in real time, my husband was actually working that day, and there's a lot of my personal attachment to that day, but it is so sickening for me to sit here and watch this country cast that away and act as though it's a collective shrug. I tweeted yesterday that I will never forgive the Republican Party for what they have done to try to not only whitewash that day, but lionize those fucking traitors. Every single person that was involved in that is a traitor to this country. Every single one of those people who assaulted police officers have abdicated their right to call themselves patriots. They are treacherous bastard insurrectionists who were inspired and incited by Donald Trump. And the fact that this country ever tries to say, or any of those people who try to say that they are pro law and order, blue lives matter, we love our police and our military. No, you don't. There is no way that those men and women who put their lives on the line that day and what they went through and those who lost their lives because of it, the long-term, lifelong, lasting consequences of it, what Sergeant Gunnell and Harry Dunn and Michael Fanone and all of those other officers who were brave enough to speak publicly. There were hundreds of officers that went through that day that defended those ungrateful SOBs who sit there right now and continue to try to turn the officers into the enemies and lionize and make heroes out of the January 6th patriots. No, what is wrong with this country? I will never ever forgive the Republicans who have enabled this. The fact that only 5% of the American people remember January 6th as the top memory of the Trump administration, and only 3% of Republicans acknowledge that, there is a sickness in this country. What the hell happened to us? Could you imagine if that had been Black Lives Matter protesters who did that? Could you imagine what the response would be? I mean, it is unfathomable. And it breaks my heart that, I don't know if anyone has read Sergeant Gunnell's piece in the New York Times. He wrote a guest column for the New York Times about what January 6th, 4 years later, has meant for him. And it's heartbreaking. And he has a Substack, too, where he talks about it in even more detail about how his experience that day was worse than his experience in Iraq. And how he was covered in not only his own blood, but the blood of his brethren as they were defending our democracy, despite the fact that how many people in that building turn around and don't give a shit. It's infuriating. But I encourage everyone to read it. We cannot let this memory go away. We can't. It is up to us. It is up to us. It doesn't matter that there are so many Democrats on the other side and others who are putting their heads in the sand and wanting to go along, get along and all that. You know what? There's always going to be those people, but there always needs to be the people like us who continue to fight for what's right. We have to. Because imagine where our country would be if everybody just, whatever, we're just going to move on because, as long as my pockets are good and I have more money in my pocket or gas prices are lower and eggs are lower, then it doesn't matter if we have a violent insurrection. It doesn't matter if law enforcement doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter that a criminal who incited a fucking insurrection is back in power again. We don't have to sit there and just take it. We don't. There has been plenty of injustice throughout this country's history where people didn't just sit back and take it. What if Black folks in this country just sat back and took it? Well, the majority of the American people for 100 freaking years were okay with Jim Crow. Let's just sit back and take it. Imagine if the American people during World War II watched what was going on and decided to sit back and take it. Well, the Japanese bombed us, and the Jews are being slaughtered in Europe, but that's not our business. There were some people who felt that way, but most people didn't. They didn't sit back and take it. So we are in a moment now where we cannot just sit back and take it. And I am despondent over how many Americans have decided to do that, but it takes a vocal minority to continue to inform, inspire, and organize to push back. Because if they're gonna do what they're gonna do, I've got news for you. People are gonna wake up on January 20th at 12:01, and it's gonna feel like a Mike Tyson left hook just woke them up and what this country is about to endure. And it's going to take people to say, oh, get back up again and go, okay, no. We're not just going to sit here and take it. We're not. We can't. We cannot. And it may feel overwhelming. We may feel as though we're up against the behemoth, but it is a David and Goliath situation. But we know how that ended up. They don't have a mandate. Stop accepting that they do. No, the fuck they don't. Mainstream media, stop acting as though this is just regular shit and, well, whatever. No, it's not. And we have the platforms to continue to do this. And I'm telling you, the more people are informed and feel as though that they can make a difference, the more we can. We cannot just give it away. Are you ready to give away democracy and give our country away and turn it into Russia or, 1930s Germany? I know I'm not. So that's what it's going to take. It's steadfast. It's going to take effort. It's going to hurt. But it can be done. It can be done. And if we don't win again, and you got to take a couple losses still, fine. But I'm going down swinging if that's what's going to happen. I will. And I think that watching like days like yesterday and the way that people are handling it reinvigorates me to say, no, we're not doing this. No, this is not what we're going to do. We're going to speak truth no matter what. And if that means that we are attacked, or that we lose our some of our friends and our neighbors who go throw their hands up. Well, it wouldn't be the first time that people have tucked tail and run in this country and left it to the other folks who had to carry the weight of this on their backs before. It's the only way we're going to do this, or else we might as well just pack it all up. But I'm not ready to do that.
Tara, there's so much to say about what you just said so eloquently, but we do have some breaking news first to get to, which is very related to what we're discussing right now. As people may or may not know, Donald's lawyers, who are going to be part of his DOJ, have been fighting to suppress the reports that Jack Smith has handed in to Merrick Garland. If you forget who Merrick Garland is, that's understandable. I believe he was Attorney General of the United States. I'm not sure. Anyway, Garland's practice has been to release reports, but it looks like so there are two different reports, right? There's the stolen documents case that was thrown out by Donald's personal pocket judge, Aileen Cannon in Florida. And then there is the January 6th report. It looks like the one he may prevail on is the Mar-a-Lago case. And from what I understand, and Dahlia, you can help me with this because you actually know what you're talking about. The complicating factor is that there are other defendants there whose cases could indeed be negatively impacted by the release of that report.
Yeah, that's right. The two other defendants, when Jack Smith had to dismiss the case against Trump, the Mar-a-Lago case, the case against the co-defendants who helped move documents and destroy documents and document all the documents, that case is still alive. There are parts of that case that are on appeal to the appeals court. And Jack Smith was very clear that they could just redact the parts of the report that in any way prejudice that prosecution, should that prosecution go forward. But as you just heard, his lawyers pretty much did another law-free letter that had no law in it, all politics, that said this needs to be suppressed, that went after Jack Smith personally, that said that Jack Smith isn't even entitled to have this information because in Judge Cannon's view, he was illegitimately allowed to run the investigation and prosecution. And Judge Cannon, who huge debate in the legal world whether she even had the authority to rule on this, went ahead and ruled that yes, This is going to be on pause pending resolution at the appeals court. This is exactly what the soon-to-be president wanted, which is to have this thing suppressed. And I just would note, the Mar-a-Lago documents case is actually the one that the public knows nothing about, right?
Right.
Like, we know a lot about the case in Judge Tanya Chutkan's court. We watched that, right, on our own cameras. As Tara just said, we watched it when the House investigation happened. We know almost nothing about the Mar-a-Lago case. And the fact that this, which I think is the biggest national security threat that, absolutely nobody paid attention to, which is the former president showing people classified documents for fun and recreation at Mar-a-Lago, that might get quashed is unbelievable. I guess I would just note, this is of a piece with a huge amount of whitewashing that's going on, suppressing information, sending everything through the shredder, rewriting history. I mean, it all goes to what, everybody has just talked about in another context, which is up is down, black is white, the Justice Department is evil, Jack Smith is the deep state, and an effort to really do what authoritarians always do, which is rewrite history in a way that makes the authoritarian look like the victim. And this is really something that I'm not sure that Judge Cannon even had the authority to decide, but she has now decided.
Well, and then I guess it's up to Merrick Garland to decide. Again, reminder, he is allegedly Attorney General of the United States still. Unless, like a lot of other cowards, he too has resigned in advance. We
will not obey in advance.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, everybody else seems to be. It's just unbelievably unnecessary. But I think one of the things Tara said, that why are we where we? How did we get here? Well, we got here by forgetting what the fight was.
Yep.
We're now fighting the fight that we neglected to fight during Jim Crow and after. And I think what we're also seeing is our complacency in the face of active attacks on our institutions that are now failing us, because Donald is good at some things, and one of them is finding and exploiting weaknesses and putting pressure on the joints. So we're now in a situation where the most criminal, I mean, maybe person, let alone, politician in American history, may indeed get away with everything. Here's what he had to say. Sorry, we tried to make this more bearable for you. At his press conference, which I guess he had to upstage President Carter's funeral or something. Anyway, here we go. Hold on.
We have a judge in New York who's a very crooked judge. I'm under a gag order. I can't even talk about aspects of the case that are the most vital aspects. I'm under a gag. Do you know that I'm the president-elect of the United States of America? I'm a former very successful president. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had borders that were sealed and beautiful. Everything was good. We had no.
Even with the voice alteration, I can't.
Oh my God. Was that today, Mary? Was that today?
Yeah, that was this morning.
Oh God.
So basically, Danielle, he's complaining because Mershon decided to sentence him after all this Friday. But first of all, he was convicted by a jury of his peers on 34 felony counts in May of 2024. He was supposed to be sentenced in July, and then September, and then November. So now it's going to be January 10th, 2025. And Mershon has already made it clear that he's not going to punish Donald in any way, shape, or form. So, this is all performative nonsense, but it is what the authoritarian does. I'm the victim, even though I'm the one victimizing everybody. And by the way, I'm not even getting punished for doing any of that. So between the stolen documents case, which to Dahlia's point is so important, we know what happened, and I'm afraid now we never will. The January 6th report, the release of which is still pending, I think we'll know on Friday. And this thing with Mershon and what's going on with Georgia, like, he got away with all of it. And that's another reason we're here. We
are complaining about it. He got away with it. He's still bitching about it.
Well, that's the point, right? So
I
Danielle,
know,
the
right?
institutions did not hold. In fact, I don't even know if the institutions exist anymore.
I mean, well, that's the point of what I said earlier with regard to Biden's op-ed, is that to say that the institutions held and that's something that we should be proud of is like it just shows you how out of touch with reality that Biden and honestly the Democrats are at this point. I think that when you see as a regular citizen of these United States, all the ways in which Donald Trump has run an absolute crime ring and crime spree and has gotten away with every goddamn thing. Not only did he, I mean, the point here, folks, is that like not only did the man get away with it, but he is ascending back to power in less than 2 goddamn weeks.
And more popular.
And doing so, right, doing so that he is now more popular and also has absolute immunity. Right. So you gave a known criminal who has been operating, right, by stealing documents, by currying favor with foreign enemies, by rearranging the axis of power globally, like, and now he's stepping back into the White House in 2 weeks. And you're telling me that during the fucking certification of the election that Democrats couldn't be bothered to remind the public just how goddamn dangerous Donald Trump is? And so, you know, when we see these things, this is the purpose of the numbing effect of all of this, is that like, then all of a sudden the public no longer cares about crimes. They no longer care about these issues because they know at the end of the day that Donald Trump and everyone around him will never be held accountable. So why bother telling us about it? Right? Like this is that one of the biggest tools of autocracy is numbing, because the numbing creates the level of hopelessness that then breeds the fear that allows them to hold on to power. Because if all of us now understand that the rule of law doesn't mean a goddamn thing in this country for those that are powerful, wealthy, and white and male, then what else matters? Then why am I paying attention? Why am I turning on the news? Why am I reading the paper? Because what I know is that Jeff Bezos is doing a fucking documentary special on Melania, that Amazon Prime just like decided that this is how they're rocking on top of the $1 million that Bezos and Zuckerberg and everyone has given to Donald Trump's slush fund. So now when I'm reading the Washington Post, I'm like, is this actual news? Or is this what they want me to be? Is this what now you start questioning, right? Whether or not what you're seeing and what you're reading and what you're ingesting is actual truth, because you can no longer trust the entities and the outlets that are providing you with the information, because now you know who they're in bed with. So all of this is a part of creating a numbed and hopeless society that allows us, that cripples us with apathy, that allows autocracy and these oligarchs to just run rampant over the country.
Yeah, and you know what's even more troubling is that a lot of people won't ask themselves those questions. So, Dahlia, you had a quick thing to say about the courts?
They have to pay enough of a price. People don't change until it hurts enough.
Well, a lot of people have been paying a price, just not enough.
Well, I'm saying the people who voted for Trump,
Yeah,
like all these people, not the cultists because they're a lost cause, but all the people in the middle who are like, well, it wasn't so bad. I didn't like the way Kamala Harris laughed, or all those like nonsense things that don't really freaking matter. Those people who think, well, it's not going to be so bad. The economy was great. When they start to feel it and realize that they are not immune from all of this, and that all of that bullshit that they were fed is actually, the joke is on them, well, maybe people will wake up. But
I hope so.
Unfortunately, they'll have to pay the price in the meantime. Like all of us have to pay the price in the meantime. We knew.
Yeah, it depends on how it's spun.
Correct.
Obviously. Anyway, Dahlia, you wanted to say something about the courts.
No, I actually think I want to connect what we started with, which is the difference between where we were at in 2016 when we were, the resistance and we were organized and we knew what truth was in this moment. And I think that the other thing that is just so chilling, I know we're going to talk about it, is the death of fact checking at Meta, right? Of Zuckerberg's complete capitulation to we're going to vote on the truth. Because if you look at the stats that Tara just gave us about what people believe happened on January 6th, about the percentage of Americans, not just Republicans, but Americans who now believe that January 6th was an inside job, a false flag maneuver by the FBI. If we're going to get to vote on truth, and that's how we're going to do journalism now, and that's how we're going to do journalism now, I just want to point out the absolute irony of the demise of democracy almost perfectly aligning with the democratization of truth. We're just going to vote on truth.
Yep.
That's what we're going to do now. And if more people think that January 6th was a deep state operation by, Antifa and BLM protesters, that will have been history. And if more people think, as Danielle says, that, these guys are just fine and that Donald Trump broke no laws in the past 8 years, that's where we are. And I think that the connection between the truth-seeking function of the press and the media and all of us, what we do every day, and what what Mark Zuckerberg just did, which is not only are we going to just farm it out to the comments section, but we're going to trust people in Texas because they have a better grasp on truth than the good people of California. I cannot tell you how chilling it is that we are going to do this by vote and by fiat instead of by knowledge and truth.
Yeah, I mean, this is a long time coming because it's also chilling that most of our textbooks are made by one company in Texas as well. I don't know why anybody thinks that Texas has more access to facts and truth than anybody else. But Waj, I mean, there are a couple. First of all, I maybe we can take some cold comfort in the fact that another reason we're here is because more people didn't care than did, which is to say, more people didn't vote than voted for Donald. So I don't know, maybe that's something we can work with, but that only works if, to Danielle's point, Democrats give people a reason to care, give people a reason to be inspired. And I don't think I think they're failing miserably. So I wanted to tie in some things that people have mentioned separately. We have this very, very disturbing, I think to say anticipatory obedience doesn't quite capture what's going on with the social media bros, right? As mentioned, they've all donated to the inauguration. Most of them did not donate to Biden's inauguration because they knew that Biden wasn't going to punish them for doing things he didn't like. But we have them sort of going out of their way to be accommodating. It's not out of fear. It's out of greed, most likely. Greed for more money, more power. So as Dahlia mentioned, we've got Amazon under the brilliant stewardship of Jeff Bezos throwing $40 million about a project that's a documentary about Melania Trump. Like, who cares about Melania Trump at all?
Not one fucking person.
So that's not
Who gives a fuck
even
about the Christmas?
Oh my God. And then we have, I think I'm sorry, I don't remember which one of you mentioned this. It might have been Dahlia as well, but conceding that Facebook isn't going to fact check anymore because,
that was today.
What are facts anyway? I mean, it's sort of this existential crisis of the fate of facts. And then we have Elon Musk saying that he's only going to be promoting positive content on Twitter and suppressing negative content. And I think, Waj, we can be very clear that the positive content is pro-Donald content and the negative content is the opposite of that.
So we have a clip. Mercedes, can you play the clip real quick?
Oh. My bad. I'm supposed to be doing that. Zuckerberg.
And the big headline here, no more fact-checking, as we've known it for the last 8 years on Facebook and Instagram. Mark Zuckerberg himself is announcing these new changes for Meta, calling the recent elections a cultural tipping point, he says, towards prioritizing free speech. So this morning, he says that Meta will move away from the independent, nonpartisan fact-checking they've had in place since after the 2016 election. Instead, he says they'll rely on community notes. In other words, users putting out context. This is similar to what X is doing. Zuckerberg says Meta's complex moderation system makes too many mistakes with too much censorship.
The fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
And that's not all. Meta also plans to get rid of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender, and to move their content moderation team from California to Texas.
I can't. What does that look, first of all? What the fuck is that? What is that? What happened to him?
No,
What happened to him? I mean, he's always exactly.
I
Well,
published. I
worse
just
than ever.
I just reshared an article I wrote 3.5 years ago. I used to work with Facebook in an independent capacity in 2015 to actually curb disinformation worldwide. And as soon as Donald Trump won the first election, they did a complete 180 on their policy. They did exactly this, and they stopped the funding on funding hackathons and combating misinformation. And the person who told me, and then they lied about it, but I used to work with them. They said, yeah, this is not a priority of the incoming administration. And I want to remind people that during COVID, one of the biggest platforms that spread disinformation about vaccines was Facebook, and that the right wing has used Facebook in particular to promote lies and conspiracy theories that have radicalized people, not just here, but abroad, that has resulted in, wait for it, people dying. President Biden, if you recall, a couple of years ago, it slipped out that Facebook is responsible for killing people, and then he walked it back. It's actually true. Go look at Sri Lanka and South Asia. We're talking about like mass mob violence against the most marginalized communities. So Facebook, if you know how to weaponize it as a tool, as a spear against your enemies, whether they're political enemies, whether it's science, whether it's teachers, whether it's the marginalized community in that country, it has been a very effective weapon. And guess who has weaponized it the most? MAGA, Donald Trump,
Way.
conservatives. No way. And in the 2024 election, there's a fact I always like to bring up. I try to be very fair. We know now that Kamala Harris lost by only 1.4 percentage points, one of the most narrow political losses in our history. She had about 2.5 months to run. She is a Black Indian woman. People somehow forget that. I always want to stress it. Black Indian woman. Racism and misogyny were at play. And thanks to disinformation, we know now that the people who had the correct facts about all the issues, the price of eggs, inflation, crime, immigration, you know where they went? They all went to Kamala. The people who had the incorrect information, disinformation, lies, they went to Donald Trump. So who does this help, Mary? We know who it has helped for the past 9 years, Donald Trump and MAGA. And I want to go back to the fact that I shared, because 4 years ago, there was a violent insurrection. About 80% of modern Republican voters believe in the big lie, the lie that Donald Trump won the election, that he actually lost by 4.4 percentage points. That's the first thing. Number two, why do people do this? Why is Zuckerberg bending the knee so shamelessly? And the two other news items that we're forgetting, because it's just like a flood now. Yesterday, Dana White, who's the CEO of UFC, is now on the board of Facebook. Dana White, literally the UFC is in-kind donation to Donald Trump. I don't know if you guys follow UFC, right?
Yeah, I do.
Dana White, on election night, Donald Trump said, hey, Dana, we're living in idiocracy. Dana White, the head of UFC, come on in and grab the mic. And then Dana White from the stage, who did he thank for Trump winning? He thanked, I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is where we are, comedians, Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, and the Nelk Boys, right? He says, because of you all, we won. And then Steve Bannon publicly thanked who for helping Donald win? Elon Musk, a billionaire bro who gave $250 million. Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, the head of Sam Altman, the head of AI CEO, Patrick, I think Soon Xiang, the multimillionaire head of LA Times. They were all depicted in this beautiful cartoon by Pulitzer Prize winning editorial cartoonist Ann Telnaeus. She submitted a cartoon. She was drawing since 2008.
For the Washington Post.
This cartoon, it's awesome. All of these men are bending the knee, and then gifting Donald Trump a bag of money. It's just on point. And that was her first draft. Had she submitted a second draft over the weekend, she would have added Tim Cook of Apple, because he just announced that he's going to give $1 million to the inauguration, Mary. And I'm so glad you mentioned that none of these people gave a single penny to Joe Biden. The reason why they're doing it, if you're a student of history, I want to go back to Nazi Germany. German industrialists helped a broke Nazi party in 1933. German industrialists realized, you know what? Democracy is not compatible with capitalism. That's what Hitler used to say. You know who else said that? Peter Thiel, billionaire, right? So now you have the industrialists of modern era, these billionaires who are openly realizing, okay, this is a transactional quid pro president. The White House is an ATM. If we scratch his back and give him money, he will give us tax cuts, deregulation. It'll be good for our business. And guess what? We will save ourselves from retribution.
But Waz, you forgot to say that cartoonist quit the Washington Post because they refused to publish it. And good for her. She said, you know what? Fuck you. She walked away and she's been hired by somebody else. I think the Atlantic or Wall Street
Journal. And her Substack took off. And so it just goes to show you, right? She decided to quit. Thank you, Tara. And I'll end on this. She said, first time in her career, that on-point cartoon was rejected. Why was it rejected? Because she calls out Bezos. And she says, F you, I will defend the free press, I will defend freedom of speech, and I will quit this plum job. Look at the courage of her, compare it to Zuckerberg and Bezos and these cowards who are all dining with Trump and Musk. And if you need a lesson in history, go back to the Nazi industrialist. And I will end on this. They thought it was good at that time, but those industrialists, the leaders of these corporations, they were tried for war crimes at Nuremberg after the war. Just saying.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we are in uncharted territory. We are in very deep waters and uncharted territory here. I want to end with a clip of Kamala Harris, and but before we get, I just a yes or no question. I'm a little worried about this. Starting with you, Tara. Is this an act of war? Donald Trump Jr. to visit Greenland as president-elect ramps up calls for acquiring the territory.
Just really quick on this. I can't believe we're back to this again. Remember this a couple years ago? Man. I think Raj and I were on CNN together back in 2018 when this was going on, and everyone was like, get the fuck out of here, Greenland? What are we doing? But this is, Michael Cohen said something today, and, people have their different feelings about Michael Cohen, but one thing he does know is he does know Donald. Just like Mary, Donald, and everybody warns when they're like, I'm telling you what I know about this man, he's serious. And last time, there were guardrails. This time, there were people who were like, get the fuck out of here. You're not going to buy Greenland. Like, stop that. That's not the case this time. He's actually sending his whatever son over there.
They're there right now. They took photos.
Right. He's there now to scope this out because he's serious. And this is more than just a joke. There is real national security implications about this, about Greenland. It's
and rare earth minerals too.
All of it. The rare earth minerals, the control, like Norway and the control of the North Atlantic and the North Pole and what Putin is trying to do there. There is a lot of strategic security considerations that involve Greenland. And for someone who says America first and I don't want to get into wars. Trump is being awfully aggressive between Greenland and trying to say that he wants Canada to be the 51st state. We need to pay attention to what's going on up there too. They have a little mini Trump that's coming along in Canada. We need to pay attention. All of this is related. It's not a joke. So yeah, it could be a potential act of war. People think that laugh it off, but
I was kind of kidding because, like if the last way to get what you want from somebody is to get Donnie involved. So that's sort of where I was going with it.
No, I know. But the thing about it is that it is actually a real thing. And, and people, they try to lull us into thinking it's a joke, but it's not.
I know. And I probably should have brought it up because with the show's almost over. This is a much larger conversation that I had wanted to have today, but I think it was important that we discuss what happened yesterday. So,
but it's in line, Mary. It is in line with our overarching theme that every one of us knows here is that no one is coming to save us this time. Every single person who thinks erroneously and at their own peril that, well, Donald Trump's not going to, that people are going to stop him. He is surrounding himself with nothing but fealty people. It's beyond loyalty. I hate to quote John Bolton, but he was right. There's a difference between loyalty and fealty. This time, it's nothing but fealty people, and they will there are no guardrails. So no one's coming to save us but us.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's where it has to be.
And Dahlia, and again, we're almost done here, but I think it is important to point out that, as you guys mentioned in the chat, it's the Panama Canal, it's Greenland, it's Canada, it's I think Waj just pointed out that Donald is now wants to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. I mean, it's, oh my God, it's it's this absurd overreaching, but I think it's also softening the ground for people who follow him and don't pay much attention for this kind of expansionist aggression, which does Vladimir Putin a big favor, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I just would note that, the reason Justin Trudeau had to step down, among other things, is because Chrystia Freeland, his own deputy, was in conflict with him about how he was handling, among other things, this kind of 51st state, we're coming for you, we're going to put tariffs on you and cripple the economy. This has, Tara just said this is not a joke. Other countries have massive interests and prerogatives. Canada has the single biggest trade partner, petroleum resources. This is no joke.
Aluminum.
And to pass it off as a kind of Pepe the Frog, will he, won't he, comedy, yuck thing. This has profound destabilizing effects on other countries, on their national security, on their economies. And I understand that the temptation is to say, we don't care. It's just Canada. It's just Greenland or Denmark. But other countries actually depend on this kind of stability and sanity. And it's no joke if you're in Canada right now trying to think about how you're going to pick your way through this.
And Mary, I know we're ending, but Donald didn't rule out today that he did not rule out that he won't use military force to take over Greenland.
Which is
right. And listen, Denmark is taking this seriously. Denmark has actually changed the coat of arms, the Danish coat of arms, to give Greenland and the Faroe Islands a more prominent place in the coat of arms. So we are going to talk about this more next time because it is a much larger discussion, and
it's a proxy issue with Russia. People don't understand. Course. We get that, but the average person has no idea. Yes, but this is all proxy with Russia.
Everything is a proxy issue with Russia. I think at this point it is safe to say. All right, we ran a little long, but I think this was an important discussion, and again, we're so happy that Dahlia's here. That the more time we have with her, the better. So to everybody watching and also from Twitter, thanks guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us, because we're a podcast now, please follow us and give us a 5-star rating because that definitely helps people find us. And to our awesome moderators, to Mercedes, thank you so much. And to Danielle Moodie, Wajahat Ali, Tara Setmayer, and of course Dahlia Lithwick. It was so wonderful to see you, my friend. Thanks all of you for being here and for everything you do, because I'm not really sure how I would get through it without you. All right, everybody, we will be back Thursday, 12 noon Eastern. Got lots of new shows coming, so subscribe, click that bell, and you'll get notified every time a new show drops. And we'll see you soon. In the meantime, please stay safe and be kind.